If you are working or starting a company in Japan, you've probably heard of Nenmatsu Chosei, the year-end tax adjustment. But what exactly is it, and how does it impact you? Whether you're an employee wondering how much tax you'll get back, or an employer trying to manage payroll compliance, this guide will be for you. Let's take a quick look at what we'll cover in this video. First, we'll talk about, what is year-end tax adjustment? We'll explain the process and why it's done in Japan. How is it different from a final tax return, which is called Kakutei Shinkoku? Many people confuse these two, so we'll clarify the differences. Who needs to do year-end tax adjustment? What do employers and employees have to do? And finally, we'll give out some tips for both employers and employees to make this process smooth and stress-free. Now, let me introduce our team. First, we have our co-founder, Taejin Yoon. Born and raised in Japan, TJ brings years of experience in investment advisory and international relations. Fluent in both English and Japanese, he has guided over 25 companies and successfully managed 40 subsidy and loan applications in Japan. Taejin is your go-to expert for navigating the complex setup requirements here in Japan. Next, we have Tyson Bettino, our co-founder who specializes in revenue growth and advisory services. And finally, here's me, Heiken, the marketing manager and the content creator here at SmartStart Japan. I'm dedicated to bringing you insights on how to successfully launch your business in Japan. So, what exactly is year-end tax adjustment anyway? In Japan, employees have income tax automatically deducted from their salaries every month. But since these deductions are based on estimates, the total tax withdrawal may not always match the actual tax owed. That's where Nenmatsu Chosei, or year-end tax adjustment, comes in. It's basically an employer-led process that recalculates each employee's total tax liability for the year. This makes sure that the correct amount was withheld, eliminating the need for most employees to file a separate tax return, actually. It will cover over or under payments. If you pay too much tax, you get a refund in your December paycheck. If it's too little withheld, the difference is then deducted. It also keeps taxes simple for employees, especially. Most salaried workers in Japan don't need to file a separate tax return because their employers handles it, basically. And if you are a full-time or a part-time employee in Japan, then more likely or not, you have been doing year-end tax adjustment one way or the other. In short, the year-end tax adjustments make sure that you only pay the tax you actually owe, and nothing more, nothing less. And for most people, it's basically a hassle-free way to settle their taxes automatically every year. So now that we know what it is, let's move on to how it differs from a final tax return form. For most employees in Japan, your taxes are, like we've mentioned, handled entirely by your employer through the year-end tax adjustment. It's a simple annual check to make sure the correct amount of tax was withheld from your salary. If any adjustments is needed, they will be reflected in your December paycheck. So that just means that as an employee, you don't have to file anything for yourself. But for the final tax return, which is what we call Kakutei Shinkoku, this is something that a lot of employees or contractors will have to pay attention to. Not everyone can rely solely on Nenmatsu Chosei or year-end tax adjustment. If you have a freelance income, side job, rental income, or even investments earning over 200,000 yen, then you must file a final tax return at the tax office. Also, if you bought a home this year and want to claim mortgage deductions, or if you have large medical expenses that weren't covered in the Nenmatsu Chosei, you will need to file a separate Kakutei Shinkoku with the tax office, in addition to your Nenmatsu Chosei. The key differences in here is that your year-end tax adjustment form for the employees are handled by your employers and applies to most salary earners with a single income source. As for the final tax return, it's filed personally and is required for people with additional income or special deductions, or if you have a freelance job. Oh, and if you need help with your year-end tax adjustment or your final tax return, send us a message at smartstartjapan.com as we are able to help you file both. To elaborate on this a little bit more, let's take a look at who will need to do a year-end tax adjustment in detail. The first one is obviously full-time employees. If you are a full-time employee working for a single company, your employers will automatically handle your tax adjustments. This applies if you receive a regular salary from only one main employer and your tax income is already deducted monthly from your paycheck and you don't have significant side income or freelance earnings that requires a separate tax return. And this also applies to some part-time and contract employees as well. This situation will apply if you only work for one employer on a regular payment schedule and have your tax income withheld monthly from your salary and have no additional or very minimal outside income, then your employer will likely handle your tax adjustment. However, If you work multiple jobs or have freelance income or earn more than 200,000 yen from your side jobs, then you may need to file a final tax return instead. With that in mind, let's take a look at what employers and employees actually need to do to process the year-end tax adjustment correctly. For employers, the first step is basically to distribute and collect the forms. So you will need to provide the necessary documents to all eligible employees. These will include your dependent deduction declaration form, insurance premium deduction form, and any other required tax-related form for that year. To avoid delays, companies should set clear deadlines for employees to return these forms, along with any supporting documents like your insurance premium certificate or any mortgage balance certificates for employees claiming if they have a home loan deductions. And once all your forms are collected, the next step is to recalculate each employee's total base tax return on their actual incomes and deductions. Employers will need to summarize each employee's total salary and bonuses for the year, apply the deductions based on dependents, insurance payments, and spouse income, and compare the recalculated tax amount with the tax that was already withheld throughout the year. Now, the next step is to adjust for over or underpayment. Once the tax are calculated, some employees may have overpaid or underpaid throughout the year, so employers must take these adjustments into their December salary payout. If too much is withheld, the excess amount is refunded to the employees in their December paycheck. If too little is withheld, then the shortfall is deducted from their December salary as well. Let's make sure that each employee has paid exactly the right amount of tax, no more, no less. After the adjustments, you'll have to prepare and submit the statutory documents to your employees as well as the tax office. So these includes your withholding slips, which are issued to employees summarizing their annual income and tax paid, their salary payment reports submitted to each employee's local municipality, as well as the statutory withholding report filed with the tax office, usually by January 31st. And if you would need help in filing your year-end tax return for your business, contact us at smartstartjapan.com. We help you save time and avoid costly tax mistakes. Make sure you are fully compliant with the Japanese tax regulation, and you'll receive bilingual support throughout the entire process. Now that we have covered what employers need to do, let's also talk about what employees are responsible for in the year-end tax adjustment process. First, you'll need to fill out and submit the forms your employer provides. These forms are usually arrive in November, and each company sets its own deadlines, but usually your deadline will be in early December. The three main forms you'll need to complete are, as mentioned, the dependent deduction form and the insurance premium deduction form, as well as the basic deduction and spouse deductions, and any income tax adjustment deduction form, which will help your employees to calculate your final deductible or taxable income based on your salary and your spouse income, if applicable. It's very important that all of these personal information that you submit to your employers is accurate and up to date, which includes potentially your My Number card, any dependent names, as well as birth dates. You also need to gather and attach any supporting documents to verify your deductions. Make sure you collect these between November and December so you don't run into any delays. In addition to filling out the forms, your employers will also ask for any official proof of deductions. These documents are essential for ensuring your tax reductions are applied properly. So you'll have to collect any life insurance premium certificates, any earthquake or national pension contribution certificates. And if you're claiming a mortgage tax reductions, you'll also need a mortgage balance certificate, which usually your bank will send out between October and November. You'll also need to keep in mind that if you have additional income over 200,000 yen, like some freelance work or rental income, you may also need to file a separate final tax return, or Kakutei Shinkoku, in March of the following year. Finally, let's talk about some tips for both employers and employees to make your year-end tax adjustment process smoother and more efficient. For employers, if you are personally handling your tax adjustments for your employees, you will need to distribute the forms that your employees will need to submit early, usually in early November, to give employees enough time to complete them. Set an internal deadline, usually around late November to early December, so that there's enough time to follow up with anyone who forgets to fill in the forms. Ensure the payroll records are accurate. Mistakes in salary, bonuses, or tax withholding can cause some last-minute issues. And make sure to get someone else to double-check all your submitted documents to make sure employees have attached everything they need, including the deduction certificates. If you are an employee, then don't wait until the last minute to give all the forms to your boss. As soon as your employee distribute the forms, make sure to review them carefully and to make sure to check whether you have the correct records as well as certificates to help with your tax reductions. If you don't, more often or not, your local municipality can reissue these certificates for you. So go check with your local government for that. If you know you need to file a final tax return as well, you will need to handle this separately in March as well, or get someone else to do it. And finally, to help both employers and employees with their year-end tax adjustments, we have included some useful tax calculations and resource tools in the description down below. And these two can help both employers and employees to get a clear idea of what to expect before submitting the forms, including how you can fill in the forms that we have mentioned previously for both employers and employees. If you're still confused, send us a quick message at smartstartjapan.com and we'll guide you to the right expert that can help you file all your taxes in Japan. Now, before we wrap up, we want to leave you with some additional resources to help you make your year-end tax filing process even easier. We have linked to 2 detailed guides in the description below that covers key tax filing strategies and best practices. The first guide is the Guide to Japanese Taxes for New Businesses, which covers basic tax obligations for both businesses and the individuals, sole proprietors in Japan. Important details like tax types, key deadlines, and employers' responsibilities to help you stay compliant. The second one is our tax reduction strategies article, which goes over how to legally reduce your tax burden using deductions and tax credits, and some practical tips on businesses' expense, tax saving strategies, and smarter filing techniques that could save you money. We will leave the links to both articles in the description down below. And finally, we know that handling year-end tax adjustments can be confusing, whether you're an employee trying to submit the right forms or an employer making sure your company stays compliant. That's where SmartStart Japan is here to help. If you're an employee, we can guide you to the right bilingual expert that can help you submit all your year-end tax forms correctly, so you don't miss out on any deductions or overpay your taxes. If you're an employer, we'll make sure that your payroll, tax filings, and statutory reports are all in order, so your company stays fully compliant with the Japanese tax regulations. Visit smartstartjapan.com and let us make sure your year-end tax adjustment form is handled the right way. And thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and check out our other resources in the description down below. See you in the next video.